We also work with other organizations in the industry to look at how we can get more women involved, how we can retain them in the industry, what the challenges are, and how to address them. What we found is that there isn't actually very much data available about women in oil and gas. So when Boston Consulting mentioned that they were looking at doing a report, this was an ideal opportunity for us to get together and start finding out a bit more about what information is available in the industry and ask companies to share with us what they're capturing about women in their companies. Now, to be honest, we found that in the data analysis, it was very difficult in some cases to get that information from companies. I want to recommend all those that actually monitor that information, that have details about that information, but unfortunately many companies don't and could not share that information with us. So in addition to the data analysis, we also did interviews with industry leaders, both male and female, and we did a global survey of men and women in the industry regarding attitudes, regarding information about the female workforce. Now, this all culminated in a report that we've presented earlier today and that my colleague Katarina Rick will be giving us a little overview of. This is only the first step. As the World Petroleum Council and in cooperation with our partners at Boston Consulting, we're planning to make this a long-term initiative. This is something that we haven't got final results on. We're only on the first step of our journey, and we're going to use the report and the study that we've done so far as the basis for further work into the issue, and we're looking to present an update of that at our next Congress in 2020 in Houston. So first of all, let us share a little bit about the report with you, and I'm going to ask Dr. Katarina Rick, our co-author for the Promoting Women in the Oil and Gas Industry report, to tell you a little bit about what we've come up with. Katarina.
Excellent. Thank you for the introduction, Ulrike, and also for being my highly esteemed co-author on the report. My name is Katarina Rick. I'm a partner with the Boston Consulting Group based out of San Francisco in the US. This has been a topic near and dear to our hearts for a long time. I lead our Global Women in Energy initiative since 2012 within BCG's energy practice. And I was very delighted at the opportunity to collaborate with the World Petroleum Council on this effort. Our report has provided some findings that many of you, and I see a lot of women in the audience, probably don't find super surprising. That the share of women in oil and gas is very low, especially compared to other industries. So on average, we're probably about 22%, where other industries have 38 on average. And if you dissect that, as we did, into the different career stages, you will see a very significant drop-off in the percentage of women in the industry around the mid-career level. So one of the major findings was we dissected between a business career track and a technical career track. And we can see that on the business career track, women start at about an equal level as men. It's almost 50-50. But by the time we reach senior management, that share has dropped from about 50% down to 20-something%, depending on which country you're in. In the technical career track, women coming out of STEM education programs, the share is even lower to start with. We start about 17% and then drop off to about 13% for senior management and technical career tracks. So there's a lot of work to do, and this baseline has shown that this is something that is consistent across regions in the world. This is something that we all need to address as a challenge, and it starts with the entry level. So we focused on that stage of the career first. And from there, through mid-career and senior levels. And we have developed recommendations for each of these levels. So maybe I'll just go through the career cycle to give you an overview. So on the entry-level segment, what we found is that a lot of young women who study engineering or math or geoscience don't necessarily feel compelled to start working in the oil and gas industry. So what the industry can do here is to, promote more women to go into those programs so that we are increasing the pool of talent we can recruit from. And secondly, also to provide more of the role models in the industry, and that includes you here in the room, I think, to go out there, do road shows, be visible. You will be surprised on how much difference that makes for a young woman studying engineering to see somebody who has been successful in the industry. It is a huge motivating factor. And if we move on to the mid-career level, we see a lot of challenges, in women's career, and none of them, by the way, have to do with your choices on your private life. The challenges we see for women in the mid-career level have much more to do with their career development opportunities and that they significantly feel overlooked. So we asked men and women, why there are not more senior women in the oil and gas industry, and 56% of women said because we get overlooked. We don't get the same career opportunities as men. And especially in that mid-career stage is where that hits. And it reflects also in the motivation of women. So one significant action we can take here as an industry is to give the same opportunities in career development to women that we give to men, and not just assume that the woman would not want the job. She does want the job. We asked them about their ambition levels too. They're just as ambitious as men, probably even a little bit more ambitious. And they're also just as flexible as men are in taking those assignments. But very often they feel they don't get asked, so we need to change that. And the second thing is we need to really put more emphasis on measuring and making sure that we don't have a single woman in the department, because I can guarantee you this is almost in every single case doomed to fail. You know that when you throw one of a kind in a big pool, that one of a kind has very little chances of succeeding, because every small thing will be a huge failure. So if we do introduce measures and metrics, they have to apply to every part of the business equally. And especially in that mid-career stage, this is very important. Then if we move on to the senior career level, one of the big things that I've heard in many of the interviews that we conducted was that there was a stretch goal, and there was somebody who trusted the female leader to take that position, even though in most cases they didn't want to have it themselves. So I heard quite a few stories, and someone said that was a real push for me to realize that I really wanted that job and I could do this job, and I had somebody believe in me. So there was true sponsorship, and that goes, in our opinion, all the way up to the CEO level. There was another very important finding that you see in the numbers. If the CEO is perceived to care about gender diversity, 86% of men also feel it is important. If the CEO, on the other hand, is perceived to not care, only about 34% of men still consider it important. So 86 versus 34. That's almost 3 times. That's a big difference. So we all can say, yes, there's a notion that it has to be driven from the top. We have the numbers to show that it is driven from the top. So that was another very important insight for us. And in general, if you look overall, measuring and having the data that Ulrike mentioned, we were lucky, I think, to have wonderful cooperation partners in this report, including our panelists here who've helped a great deal in pulling this together. We have data representing primary data representing 25% of the global workforce, which includes all of the major IOCs and some of the largest NOCs in the world. That is quite outstanding, and I'm very happy to be able to share this data in the report with you all. And I hope next time we do this, and for the Congress in Houston, where we want to present an update, we have an even bigger baseline. So voluntarily reporting, you know, into the WPC through the big global platform that it has, you know, so that we just not cover 25% of the workforce, but I would say 50 to 75% of the workforce. That would be our goal for the next time around.
Thank you very much, Katharina. Now, we've assembled a leadership panel here, and I'm very pleased that we've got some outstanding people of the industry joining us today to talk about the findings that we had in the report. So let me just introduce them down the line, and then I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves a bit more and talk about their personal experiences, their business experiences with the issue of women in oil and gas in their companies and countries or regions. So I'll start with Ivan Martin here. Ivan Martin is head of energy at Boston Consulting. He's a senior partner and vice chairman. I'm just going to call him in short the engine of our report. I was very, very pleased when you came and approached us about looking more into the issue around women in the oil and gas industry. And your support has been invaluable. And I'm very pleased to see that this comes from not only a leader, but also a male leader to say we need to do more about this. Next to him is Rima Al-Ghanim. Rima Al-Ghanim is the division head for women development and diversity in Saudi Aramco. And just to give a little bit of background, she started the first female scholarship program in Saudi Aramco and has taken leadership in her company to develop the issues of women in the industry. Next to her, we have the CEO of Woodside, Peter Coleman, and we very much look forward to his feedback on some of the points that we raised in the report. Another female leader is Vartika Shukla from India. She's the Executive Director for Technical Issues at Engineers India Limited and has been recognized repeatedly with Excellence Awards for Women in Public Sector in India. Next to her is Pedro Mira Salamanca, the chair of CORES in Spain. Pedro Miras is actually sitting on the WPC executive board for the next cycle and has been an initiator of the WPC's involvement in the report. So I'm going to ask each of you to just talk a little bit about your own background, and I'm just going down the line. So Ivan, if you want to talk about, what made you think about these issues and what made you take that up and bring it to us, what's the background to that?
Okay, the background is, BCG, I think woman integration, woman development is in our DNA. So we really believe in that. It's a genuine commitment from the company. And at the same time, I believe that the oil and gas sector is right now transitioning to a new paradigm where we will need a lot of talent going forward. And the same way we are investing in, we're making big investment to compensate for the declining of the fields, we also need talent to compensate for the retiring workforce and also to develop or bring the capabilities needed for the future. And in that scenario, women are going to play a very important role. We need to attract them to the industry. We need to show a positive image about the industry also, because right now, the industry is under a lot of pressure. We are fighting against this license to operate, and we need to create an attractive environment for women in the industry. I think we need also to retain them, and we need to retain them at this mid-level, mid-management level, where we are struggling, as the report shows, and we need to promote them in order to have leaders, no? And that was the reason why we thought, being involved with the World Petroleum Council and develop this report, who, as you mentioned, is not a report, it's really an initiative, because we want this to be the beginning. Now we have the baseline, we have the data, the beginning of a journey where we want to see big changes in the next 3 years. But also it reflects a little bit on what we did internally in BCG in our energy practice, no? I mean, as the leader of the practice, and again, talking how important is that the leaders are really committed on these initiatives. I mean, I launched together with Katrina Rick what we call our Women in Energy initiative, where we really wanted to send a message to all our organizations that developing women was extremely important for us. Second thing, for each principal and project leader in our practice, and again, trying to address these mid-level management issues, retention issues, we assigned a male sponsor, someone that was going to coach and sponsor the person, and give them comfort that they could be promoted, that they could develop a long-term career in consulting and consulting in energy. There, we also communicated a lot, and that's another finding of the report, that communication is extremely important. And communication is very important because changing this requires a lot of perseverance. We have seen many initiatives being launched in many companies that after 6 months, after a year, they fade and they disappear. We need to communicate. We need, in order to communicate and beat that inertia, I think another important thing that we did in our practice was metrics. We wanted to have metrics, and metrics in 2 ways. One, to measure how we were progressing in developing more women in our practice, and second, also showing how having more women in the practice was bringing business results, which were the revenues and the work developed by women in our practice. So it's not just about quotas, it's about showing the benefits for the company of having more women in our company.
I think that's definitely something that could probably be taken up in a lot more companies. And I think further down the line, if we could share more about that and how to do that, you know, might help raise initiatives and standards around the world. Reem, in your company, how does that work and what are your experiences?
Thank you, Ulrike. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today and with you all. I think if I go back to my own experience, the first time I met a young lady, 18 years old at the time, her name was Sarah. And Sarah grew up in a Saudi family. Her father worked at Saudi Aramco, and she always wanted to be like her father. He would work hard, he would come back home and talk to his daughter about the work that he did. And so she grew up with this thought of, I can be an engineer. And she was always interested in working with her hands and creating things. So being an engineer was something that her parents ingrained in her. I met Sarah in 2006. She, at that point, had applied to be one of the first women to go through our sponsored student program, or a scholarship program. That was the first time that Saudi Aramco had done that. For 30, 40 years, the company has always sponsored men. But about 10 years ago, we opened the door for women because we needed to build that pipeline of women engineers, chemical engineers, mechanical, petroleum, geoscience majors to enter our industry. So I met Sarah, and she was a smart young lady. She graduated high school with nearly 100%, and that's how she got into the scholarship program. She applied to a number of universities, and I helped her identify, and she got into some very top universities, Texas A&M, Stanford, and a few others. And she ended up going to a university with another group of her friends and studied petroleum engineering. She came back and pursued her career in the company. It wasn't easy. She was one of the very few petroleum engineers in her department. A few years later, she went and earned her advanced degree, her master's degree from Stanford University this time. And just to see her progress, and Sarah is currently a member of my advisory committee because her journey and her experience is something to be learned from. Sara is a young lady that, because of her parents' support, was able to pursue the topic that she was interested in. Because of the support that she got from the company, she was able to advance and pursue her education. And because of her ability to push barriers and the support she was getting from her organization, she's now able to, and she recently got a promotion, advance in her career. She's still young, but she is still, like many other women in oil and gas, facing the normal barriers that women face in the energy business. The perception that we all women need to work around, that women should not be in the energy business, and we all deal with that every day going into our work environments. The playing field not being a level playing field, and the pipeline, it not being developed or supportive for women. And so at Saudi Aramco, we've built an ecosystem to support the development of the pipeline with girls that are 7, 8, 9 years old, introducing them to role models in the company, ensuring that they build their interest in STEM education. So we take them through programs that entice that interest. We take their parents, their mothers and fathers, through programs to encourage them to support their daughters as well. And so building that pipeline is one challenge that we are facing up until early career women and women in the middle of their careers, with programs that support women in business and women in leadership, and them moving up the career ladder, whether it's technical leadership or people management. We also work to support the perception, building inclusive leadership skills. And so ensuring that leaders and people that are making decisions, both men and women, are able to operate with a inclusive leadership behavior. And that's a mindset shift that's very important, that needs to happen in the culture. And so we focus on that a lot, in addition to, of course, deploying measures and metrics. Because if you don't see it and you don't measure it, you can't improve it, right? So that is a big change right now, and as we show leaders and we basically show them their organization, they look at themselves in the mirror, they're better able to determine what targets need to be set and where there are gaps in the efforts that they're doing. And not just for gender diversity, and that's a very important topic and the topic of our session today, but Saudi Aramco is looking at several diversity pillars, so generational diversity, cultural diversity, and special needs as well fall under the diversity spectrum. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Reem. And I'll go straight on to Peter Coleman from Woodside. How does it work with your company, and what are your experiences?
Well, firstly, thanks to everybody for turning up this afternoon. I wasn't quite sure how many people would be left after the previous forum, so my only encouragement next time would be to identify a male colleague and bring a male colleague with you. It'll double the numbers in the room. I think it'll be very helpful for all of us. Firstly, I think I commend the report. There are many things in it that I find very true in my personal experience and in the experience of my company, Woodside. And prior to working with Woodside, I worked for a super major for 27 years. So I've been in the very big end of town, and now kind of what we call a large independent type company with a global reach. For us, it's very simple. Our organisation is not as complex as some who are represented up here on the stage. So for us, it's led by me. It must be led by me. The numbers demonstrate that. When it's the old adage, when my boss is interested in something, then I'm fascinated by it. And I think you see that in the organisation. Organisations do reflect their leadership, particularly in their behaviours. And of course, people join companies because of their values. And the key there is, are those values being lived out each and every day? Look, there's a few things that need to be done that we've talked about. We probably haven't talked a lot today, or may not talk a lot about the environment. in which we work. And the environment in which we work is both the physical environment, but it's also the non-physical things and within the environment. Is it a safe place to work? And that's not is it physically safe, but is it safe for us emotionally? Those things need to be dealt with, and we see that, and we've started addressing that at Woodside. The first thing is to actually recognise it. We're talking about things now that are non-negotiable. Our executives now have gender-specific targets put in their performance contracts. I did try for a few years not to do that. It just didn't work. It didn't work. And so we now have targets in there. Those targets are now starting to be met, and we're very pleased with the outcomes we're seeing from them. As a CEO, of course, we say we have many children in our house, so to speak, that we need to look after. And so this is not always just a gender-specific challenge that we have, because, of course, gender is pretty straightforward to identify the differences. You're either male or female. It's a very, very easy thing to see. As a CEO, though, you've got to deal with many other challenges and differences within the work group, and that could be differences in age, nationality, ethnicity, religious beliefs, sexual orientation, physical ability, thinking styles, experience, family background, and so forth, and the list just goes on and on and on. And of course there's also then different career stages and people's maturity through those career stages. So you can't just pick one part of this and say, look, if we solve this, if Venus can talk to Mars, so to speak, and we can communicate in a common way, and we're safe, then we've cracked the code and now this will work. No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. There are inbuilt biases in the system. You have to challenge those biases, and I'll be honest with you, some of the most egregious acts that I found within my company came out of my human resources group. My human resources group is 85% women, okay? The least culturally diverse organisation in Woodside is my human resources group. There's not one African, not one Asian, not one Middle Eastern person in that group. And so you've got to get in there and start going after that, because they're the front line. They're the people who are recruiting. And so they are starting to recruit people that look like them. So as a CEO, you've got to go all the way down to that recruitment, that university person, when you're looking at that young graduate who's making a choice of the company that they wish to join. You have to go right in at that level and then start feeding the pipeline through. What do we see? We do see women making choices, or we did see women making choices at mid-career. It was typically 2 levels below our senior executive entry point, and we can see that. There was the progression followed the male group up to that point, and then there was a plateau, and people were making choices and either leaving the company or going into technical roles that allowed them to just kind of go along with things. And there was a paternalistic attitude within the company that we had to crack the code on. Where are we today? I'm describing the Woodside of 5 years ago. The Woodside today is vastly different. We set ourselves on a diversity program 3 years ago with very specific goals. We're blowing those goals out of the water at the moment. We're really, really moving forward because this is the right thing to do. And when you're doing the right thing, the entire organisation gets after it very, very quickly. And when you can see time and time again that the people who are getting the opportunities are extremely competent and motivated at what they do. When you break down those barriers of those complaints and so forth that are going on and really target and understand the reason for it, then you start to see things start to move, and you start to see organisations will self-correct and move their way along. So as a CEO, I now have the what should I say, the joyous part now of being able to expand what I do beyond a gender discussion now to one of inclusion. And inclusion then encompasses a lot of other factors for us, and so we're moving beyond that. To put this into context for you, this is not just an oil and gas challenge. My company is based in Perth in Australia, the most remote capital city in the world. It's a mining city, hard rock mining, the percentage of women in the workforce is 15% on average coming out of Perth. There is only one creche in the central business district of Perth. All right, so you have to understand where the starting point we're coming from. Woodside's numbers today are double that. They were not that when I joined. So today we have 30% of women in our workforce. That's particularly pleasing since half my workforce work remotely and work on either a 2-week or a 4-week remote cycle. So not only are we dealing with an office-based challenge with respect to diversity, we're also dealing with one where my business is actually a remote business that is 1,000 miles from my headquarters. And so you put that extra complexity into the business and you can see the different types of workplaces that we've got. Why do I do this? Very simple. I'm a father of 5 children, 4 of them are daughters. My daughters deserve exactly the same opportunities in life that I've had. And so each and every day I work towards that particular goal. And I'm pleased to say at this point we're starting to see some differences happen.
Well, thank you very much. I think that was inspirational, and I'm hoping that some companies are taking note of that. Radhika, can I ask you, how does it work in India? How did it work for you?
Thank you, Ulrike. Very good afternoon to everyone. I'm very pleased to be part of this panel and thank WPC for including us here. I come from an engineering consultancy company in India, which is dealing into implementation of projects in the oil and gas sector. We are proud to share that we have about 12% of our workforce out of 3,200 employees as women. And the public sectors in large, which are about 290 companies in India, have about 6%. The journey for most of us in the engineering companies has been challenging, no doubt. Nevertheless, in all these years, in various roles, right from the beginning of joining the industry to the level that the decision-making levels that we are in, it has not given us any room for having doubts on the system as such. The system provides us opportunity, and there are challenges, no doubt, but if you turn those challenges to opportunities, there is a gamut of excellence that you can achieve in your various roles. So all the women in the organizations are included in most of the discussions. A lot has to be done on your own front. I mean, how forthcoming you are in terms of participation. And if there is value, it becomes then gender neutral. Now, when we see the world of today, we are sitting in a very volatile and uncertain world. The oil and gas industry, which is likely to move in a direction, and that direction has to be steered such that each and every business has growth, it sustains, and it survives this cycle. For any industry to survive in this kind of volatility, it is important that there are people who think differently. It is important that there is there's creativity about everything. There is innovation. And the businesses and the financial decisions which come have a huge lot of experience. So for these diverse thought processes, there have to be people who have the ability to think differently, to think through issues, to think beyond boundaries, and to think beyond geographies. People who have ability to visualize what's happening in the future and meet those imperatives in the organization. And I believe when we get to do that, it's essentially doesn't have much to do with gender. It's gender neutral. So whether it is men or women, it is important that these aspects are brought, these thought processes are brought to the table for discussions. And that is the very reason why we need to have the women into the process of discussion, into the process of inclusiveness, such that it is a diverse and a very varied and a very intensive kind of process to get to the right end of the solution. So when we are looking at bridging energies for future, it is important that we get both the men and the women onto the same table and have equal opportunities. Now, when I started my career, we were very few women in the organization, and particularly in the engineering sector, we were far less, maybe about 2 to 3%. I recall in my early years when we were looking at commissioning of some of the plants, we were a team of 6 trainees who joined up, and I was the only lady in the group. While all my colleagues who were men were sent to the site for commissioning, I was sort of excluded out. The manager thought it wouldn't, maybe not proper to send her out. So I waited along for the next opportunity, and when it came, I walked up and volunteered. That, well, why don't you look into the prospect of sending me around? He said, the place is not safe. I said, I'll look after myself, don't you worry. And I'll be in touch if there is any problem. And so he thought for a while and then packed me off. So with that, when there was the feedback which came from site, from the team who was with me, it sort of reflected that there is no difference. So there are situations which are challenging, situations which one has to volunteer and sort of, bring forth your own value to that project or that opportunity. And once you do that, it gives a kind of self-confidence to oneself. And once you repeat that, it becomes ingrained into your personality. And that is a very important aspect, because at levels in which you are in the younger years, people at the top, people who have to deliver, who have targets to meet, want volunteers. They want people who want to come out of their way, do that little extra to meet their targets. And the same thing when you are at a position where you want to take decisions and you are into a management role, you would also look for people who give that extra bit to meet those targets. And that is, in my view and my experience, has never had any kind of bias. I agree to some of the points that there are some unconscious biases which is a tough thing to remove, but you take that challenge at a company level, and they may be sort of overcome. And Peter has so well given the example of the leadership at the top and what changes it can bring to the system, to the processes, to the composition of the team, down to each and every level in the company. So those are my thoughts and my experiences in the industry for so many years.
Thank you very much, Vatika. And I'll move on to Pedro Miras. Now, Pedro, I called you the initiator of the work that we're doing at WPC now. Tell us a bit more about, what made you think about that? What made you put that forward? What experiences do you have?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ulrike. And first, I would like to say that I'm really happy to be here, because I think this study is going to be a key study for the industry in the next years. And let me say first one thing, that this is an important study, but it's much more important the following, because we have taken a photograph and we have to check how the photograph is moving on the future. This is my first statement. The second is that I'm not going to speak about, I think it's a mistake to speak about men or women and the participation in the oil and gas industry. In my opinion, the key question is talent. Talent is the key. This industry, as you know, has a lot of problems. And we are not in the best moment of the history. We are in a bad situation. I remember years ago in the Madrid Congress, one of the outcomes was that young people don't want to work in this industry. And how are we going to lose half of the talent? It's a question of surviving. It's a question of talent. And retained talent needs men and needs women. This is the key question from my point of view. My experience, I think I can speak very, very comfortable because I have been working in the oil industry for 30 years, and the last 25 years I have been working with teams that have a great majority of women. For example, when I was working for as director of the National Energy Commission in the oil area, close to 60% of my team was composed by women. And not in the low level, but in all of the levels. This is one of the things that this report says that is important. And nowadays, in Corres, we are in the executive committee, there are more women than men. So I feel quite comfortable to speak about this. And when I was thinking, what is the key for this? Because it's very easy to say a lot of things very general. But in my opinion, what is the key for this? What should we do in order to promote this? And after thinking a lot, I think the key word is flexibility. If you provide flexibility to those who are working with you, you give equal opportunities to men and to women, because the necessities of the things that are occupying the time for men and women are normally different. You have to give them flexibility in order to do their work in the way that you need. For me, this is the key. This is the real thing we have to do. And now this is quite easy because technology provides a lot of flexibility. We can work at home, we can work in everywhere using a lot of technology that was very, very difficult 20 years ago, but not nowadays. So this is, for me, is the key for this. And this is all I want to say. That I think this study is quite important, but the most important one is the next that is to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pedro Miares. Now, I don't want to leave Katerina out completely. So, Katerina, to you, we've been working on this report for quite a while, and we've had the pleasure of speaking to a lot of people during that work and getting some quite interesting results back. What surprised you most with the outcomes of the report? What were the things that you didn't expect when we started out?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I've been asked this a few times. So what did surprise me was when we started out, I was quite skeptical on how many senior women we would actually find that we could talk to, that would share their experiences. And also I was very curious what the men in the industry would say, because we interviewed both. We interviewed men and we interviewed women. And I was personally surprised on how many exceedingly talented and absolutely astonishing and accomplished women we encountered that were not visible to the public eye. And they have been very gracious with their time and very open and candid in sharing their experiences. And for me personally, it was a very moving experience to have the opportunity to talk to them. Very inspiring, you know. You hear a lot of stories and anecdotes. There's one story I want to share that has had quite a big impact on me in hearing it. One female, very senior female manager told me that she was appointed interim project manager for one of the largest gas development efforts in the world. And she was only the interim manager. So her contract was renewed on a 3-month basis. Every time she was wondering, is it going to be final? Is it going to be final? Because the higher-ups were searching for a man to take the project management job that had the same qualifications. Familiar with the joint venture partner from Asia, having studied in upstream technology, managed big projects successfully, speaking several languages fluently, etc. And as we would say in the industry, they came up with a dry well. They couldn't find the man that had the same qualifications. But they kept searching. So after about a year or so, she finally got confirmed as the official project manager. And that to me was, it kind of showed that there is sometimes still a thought process in the background going on around, is she really the right person for the job? Whereas nobody in the field she was working with ever doubted that. The day she was announced, they threw her a party and said, finally, it's official, right? So when we think about promoting women in the industry, I think the key thing is to make the question around the potential that that individual has, the talent that she brings to the table. Because that's typically the question that comes up when men are up for promotion. And it's like, oh, this would be wonderful for him. It's great for his potential. When women are up for promotion, very often today, the question is she really ready for this? Can she really do this? So we need to ask every candidate, what is that good for their potential? That would be my ask.
Well, thanks very much, Katarina, because I think if we're looking at that, and every time we talk to somebody, there seems to be agreement. We need more women in the industry. We don't just need more women, we need them at all levels of the industry. So the question is, what do we need to do to get there? Peter, you were mentioning that you tried without setting metrics, you tried to sort of encourage it through different ways. How do we address these challenges? How do we make a big change? Do you want to take that first, and then I'll ask some of the others?
Well, firstly, it needs to become personal. So you're never going to change unless it becomes personal, and secondly, you can't delegate it. And then you have to ask each and every day where it is. And let me say, the biases, the inbuilt biases, are generally put in there by well-intended people who put little hurdles in the system around entry points and so forth. And it's not just limited to women. I can go through examples of educational entry points that really don't allow Indigenous Australians into our workforce because they just simply don't achieve that level of education consistently. Same thing with international kids coming into our business and their ability to enter the workforce based on visa status and so forth. These are all things that are built in, and unless the CEO is watching them, and unless you're looking for signs of bias, you're not going to find them, because you've got to ask question and question and question. I can give you the example when it was a very bad day for a number of people in my organisation. The day they first brought in our graduate recruitment statistics, and they told me that we'd recruited a magnificent 16% of women into that group. And when I asked why, it was, well, the answer was, well, that reflects the number of women in STEM courses in university, and so thereby that should be our target. I threw them out because it just wasn't acceptable. The reality is women in those STEM courses typically are in the top half of the group anyway, because they've made a choice. It didn't take long. The next year we were then almost up at 50%. We've been 50% for the last 5 years, and so you can see you can do it. We still had to do more work though, because it simply wasn't the numbers. After year 2, I said, show me the names. Show me the names of the graduates. And the issue that I then saw in the names is that they were all white Anglo-Saxon. And so our recruiters were recruiting women, and so they checked that box, but now it was just white Anglo-Saxons. So lots of Joneses and Williamses and so forth, Smiths and so forth in there, but no Wongs, Lees and so forth, which was really reflective of the university base that they were coming from. So in fact, our recruiting was not reflecting the broader community. And so you have to go down into those sorts of levels. And the target setting, early on we set some broad objectives and said this is what we want to achieve. The reality is And I challenged the organisation. I said, please don't make me set a target. Because you'll often hear the excuse out there, well, you set targets and you get these token outcomes and so forth, and so you shouldn't set a target because the quality of the people getting promoted won't be good enough. Well, I can tell you that's just not true. The quality of the people are good enough. You do need to set yourself targets, but you need to keep replenishing the pool. Because generally when you start in this program or this process, you deplete your talent pool very quickly. And so you then need to get in and start to say, how can that talent pool start to make its way through? Look, we've got every policy. I stopped policy generation in the company. The problem was not policies, it was the implementation and the use of policies. And then importantly for us, it was, as I mentioned early on, it was about feeling safe in the workplace. It was about being able to have hard conversations and also not feel like you're being preyed upon by either your peers or supervisors in the workforce and being put to the side in this paternalistic attitude that was going on. For me, the magic number is about 30%. What I've seen is once you get diversity at about a 30% level, you start to get critical mass where the conversations change. And I must say, it's a far more enjoyable place to work today. You find a bias towards one group, whether it's male or female, and guess what? It's not just limited to men. Male or female, they become grumpy. They become self-indulgent, they just look inward, and they start to complain. It becomes a complaints group. Actually breaking it up, getting diversity in the thought process and so forth, actually makes for a happier organisation. A much happier organisation, much happier conversations, much more open collaboration and teamwork and so forth. So we've gone beyond the numbers now. It's actually a fundamental business imperative. One last thing I would like to leave with you, as an employer who is trying to do the right thing, for those of you who do find these biases, please leave. Please send me an application and come work for us, because it won't be until people see there is a competitive advantage in the marketplace for those employees who consistently honour these principles that change will happen. And just leave that grumpy old group over there of males who want to only talk to males, leave them by themselves. Because I'll guarantee you, consistently over time, they will underperform as a group. They will fundamentally underperform as a group, and then somebody will wake up one day and say, what's going on? Oh, I wonder what's happening over there, and why that group consistently outperforms. And I'll guarantee you is that they have diversity and inclusion in their workplace that are second to none. And so you need to help me. You need to help those on this panel by making personal choices and saying, I'm not putting up with this anymore. And then the best way to do that often is just leave the conversation and move to somewhere else. I can't believe this story where somebody was an interim project manager for a year and a half. And I've heard those stories before, and I know they're true. I really don't. I cannot comprehend the perseverance of that individual, that she continued to believe in herself enough, contrary to all of the signals that she was getting, and stuck with that. So that's a very, very strong individual. Very few of them around, unfortunately, but I would encourage you, the best way that this will change is if you don't accept it, and the best way to not accept it is come join somebody like us.
Thank you very much, Peter. I think that was a very, very strong point made here about, speak up and do something. Now, what is it that companies can do? What is it that can be done from the companies? Now, particularly you said that you moved up the percentages in your company from 6 to 12. That's doubling it. If you keep doing that, we'll soon get to a gender balance. What have you done that made a change?
There are some very path-breaking policies which are steered by the government. Mm-hmm. I do understand the implementation is a problem in the private companies, but there is a way to manage this imbalance if it is implemented through some policies. So there are, one is we have The current government under the current Prime Minister has initiated a mandate that any company over 50 employees should have a daycare facility. And that is what my experience has also been, that both my personal experience and my team members' feedback, not just the women, even the men, that in the younger years, in maybe 8-10 years, when they get married and they have young children, and that is the time when there is immense need for support. And it's a big thing to have close by a place where you can have your child safely, and then you can get on with your career later on once you have things in place. So that is one policy which has been implemented, and it has really given wings and given a lot of mental relief to the employees. The second is we have a provision of taking a 2-year break and coming back into the industry, the same company, at the same level, no doubt, but at least you have the job in place. So that is a policy which has been implemented in all the public sector organizations, where, and that is also holding true for the men and the women. So it is again gender neutral policy, which the government has. And quite recently, I think about 3 years ago, we have a policy at the management level also, at the CEO level, at the director level, that wherein the Company Act in 2013, it mandates that there should be a functional director. There should be a director on the board of each company who should be a woman. These are 3 very important policies which are mandated. So I'm very, very happy to hear what Peter has shared today. It is really a vision and a, you know, a kind of a forceful, well-thought policy in terms of the company. But the intervention from the government many times implements these, because while people may be good in their minds, it is the will to execute the goodness in terms of converting them into tangible, decisions, tangible outcome, may be wanting for a variety of reasons. They may be preoccupied by other affairs, they could be preoccupied by the top line, bottom line, and so on and so forth. So many times the policy in place, mandated by the, ministries and government, helps put the balances, in check. On the front of a manager and a leader of my teams, I have come across many youngsters whom you can make out when you sort of walk across the hall and see them. One can always make out that there is something bothering them. And when you ask, especially the ladies, to go on to the site, because of their own good, they need to get experience at site, because that is something which will help them move up. When they're into discussions, especially in the oil and gas sector, and they cannot visualize a plant, it is very difficult to help them see, help them push their thoughts, push their points across to the table. So it's very important that they get exposed to site. So I have seen whenever, many times I have asked the youngsters to go, and we have a roster, we sort of check who has gone to site and who has not gone to site, so that they have an overall experience of all aspects of their career. So we sort of support them, we tell them, like, get your parents to live with you for a month or so that you can go to site and sort of get that experience. If you don't, you're going to miss out on your career later. And at that particular time in the younger years, you may not realize that, what you're missing. And it is our duty, it's our responsibility as leaders, as seniors, to give them that, message. And it is after, once or twice, it sort of gets across to them, yes, I need that too. So it's your duty to mentor, to groom, to sponsor them, make sure that they are developed in an overall way and they do not sacrifice their career because, yes, in the younger years, family does play an important role. There is no doubt on that.
Thanks very much, Fatik. And that is actually something that we've come across very much in our interviews. The fact that young women need to get that experience. They need to go out there. And it was the recommendation of both male and female leaders to say, in your early career, you need to take those opportunities. You need to make sure that you get that experience. Is that something that you also find in Saudi Aramco, Reem?
Absolutely. So I think with Saudi Aramco, we have a very unique organization that has always grown its leaders from within the company for the most part. So development is always a huge part. We invest a lot in human resource development and especially in our young talent. So a number of, so for example, our Young Leaders Advisory Board play a significant role at Saudi Aramco in giving advice to our senior leadership. And these are young professionals that are about no more than 30 years old that can give that perspective to our senior leaders that they might not have had before. And in addition, we run several programs. Our most recent is our STEP program, a 5-week program that ensures young professionals with little to no experience coming into the company are developed very quickly within the first 3 months of them joining Saudi Aramco on expectations, working together in collaborative teams, in cross-functional teams, and then presenting out to their organization ideas and innovative ideas on how to do the business better. And so as an organization that really cares for different perspectives of diversity and inclusion, whether it's from an age point of view or a gender point of view, it's also important to recognize that we can only do this really because we're getting that support from our senior management. And our president and CEO who spoke here yesterday and I think did a fantastic job, has always stressed the importance of not just focusing on the young talent in the organization, but certainly ensuring that our women coming into Saudi Aramco, whether early in their career or as they advance, get the attention needed, the stretch assignments, the goals to achieve, and he continuously asks us to give him more insight on what's happening in terms of women's advancement. He sets the tone, and when that tone is set at the top, then you get that 86%, right, Katerina, of leaders that are interested in seeing this commitment through. And that's really what needs to happen.
Thank you very much, Reem. Now, we've heard several times here that we need more women because we need more talent in the industry. Now, we also heard that a lot of the challenges I'm going to ask you about that one.
Which one, sorry? The impact? Okay, good. So the question is the impact of male, of changes in digitalization, no?
Workplace.
Yeah.
The impact of digitalization on workplace changes. How is that going to make the situation easier? We know it's happening, so a lot of the excuses that have come up so far are going to fall by the wayside. So what do you see changing through that?
I think that, as I was mentioning before, the industry is going under a big transformation. And that transformation is going to require very different capabilities that are going to be needed. And that's a fantastic opportunity to use those need for new capabilities to bring, I mean, the other 50% of the population that is there waiting for having a place to work. And also, I mean, there are many of the jobs that are going to require very different, I mean, setups, and women can add a lot of value and can bring, as it was being mentioned before by some of the panelists, a lot of creativity, a lot of new ways of thinking, because if the industry needs to change, we need to bring new thinking into the industry. But
I'd like to put that question also to the rest of the panel. What do you see changing through the massive developments that we have through digitalization? What do you see changing for women in the industry? Anybody who wants to take that? Yeah. Peter, I can see you.
Yeah, let me take it on, because we've embraced not only digitization or data analytics, but also artificial intelligence, robotics, and additive manufacturing. So we bundle them all up. What I would say is they're a contemporary industry. So they're contemporary industries. They're like the internet industries, which evolve at the pace of Moore's law. About every 2 years, there's a disruptive change occurring. The oil and gas industry typically changes on a cycle of about 7 to 8 years. So when you look at new technology being implemented and adopted within the industry and then implemented in the field, it's about a 7 to 8 year cycle. So it says you've got now two paths going. One is the contemporary path for the oil and gas industry. You're now introducing this contemporary industry, you know, a today industry that particularly the kids coming out of university are very, very familiar with. So what we're seeing is two things. One is an unintended change in culture with respect to the pace and acceptance of change. The kids are coming out of university with real skills. No longer do they need to go through this gated competency process, because they're actually coming out of university with coding skills that, in fact, the older part of the workforce does not have. And so we've matched the two up. So from day one, they can be very productive. With respect to the digitization of the workforce, well, what it means then is a lot of these issues that we've had about remote locations, travelling to site and so forth and so on, aren't there anymore. And in fact, for us, the head of that organisation is a female, an engineer who previously ran our supply base, but now is running our digitisation group. And so, you know, for me, it's got two things. One is it's going to fundamentally change the workplace and how we work, where we work, and whom we work with. And then secondly, it's going to change the way we think about the pace of change. So it says if these issues that are still here in 10 years' time, these issues around gender equality, around diversity and inclusion, are still here in 10 years' time, those companies that are still dealing with those issues probably won't be in business, because it's a business imperative. You're just going to be out of business. I'm sorry, because your workforce is not going to accept that that's something that they will put up with anymore. And so I think those companies that see it early, those companies that move with it, there's been some excellent things set up here about government driving it and so forth. Statistics are fantastic. Please, I would encourage you to go to our website, look at our sustainability report. You'll see all of these statistics in there. That's government driven, but that's the old name and shame. It works really well. I'm sorry, in industry we are competitive. But equally, I'd also say digitisation brings in a collaborative world. It's a new world, and that's a world where women excel. Men, if I can be, you know, typical for men, we typically defend a hill. Men will defend a position. How many meetings have you been into and the male's up there telling you why this is the best idea and no other idea should be heard of today? All right, men defend a position. They're very good at defending hills. Women are very good at collaborating and finding that middle ground and understanding it. Digitisation is a world of collaboration. It's a fundamentally different way of working. And so the kids are coming out of high school now, coming out of universities, And we're actually changing the way they work. They are in a collaborative environment now in their university space, and we force them into a cubicle in the workplace. We force them to be into a hierarchical structure and so forth. And we force them into certain processes that they're totally unfamiliar with. And so those companies that don't understand that, and don't understand that you've just spent 20 years educating that individual who's joined your workforce in a particular way of thinking and working, and now you're going to spend another 20 years teaching them another way of doing it, I'm sorry, you're not going to be competitive. So I think digitalisation is a fundamental change, and it's a fundamental enabler for women in the workplace. I think it's a fantastic thing.
Thank you. I've got a comment there from Pedro as well.
Yep. No, I think digitalization and new technologies are key in this question, because it's the only way to provide flexibility. I'm going to say this word a lot of times, because in my experience it's the key driver to attract, to retain talent, and retain talent not only for men but for women. If you use digitalization and new technologies, you are able to make people to work in other places and to use wisely their own time, and to work from home, from their houses or other places. And this is the key, because in my opinion, policies to impose or to put on the table policies, good policies, it's not enough. We have a lot of examples that companies that have put a lot of policies, try to impose a percentage of men and women, and at the end what happens is that if you are not able to work flexible way, many women deny or don't want to continue growing in the organization because they are not able to follow these habits. So flexibility is the key, and digitalization is very important because it makes flexibility become a reality.
Thank you very much. Now, before we sort of go and ask each of them for a final statement, let me check. Questions from the audience. Now, first row, first question. May I have a microphone, please? Hold your question. Any other questions so I can see where else I'm going after that? This is your one chance. Okay. One more? Anybody else? And a third one. Okay. I'll take those three questions.
Okay.
Starting with you.
I'm Saida. I'm from Pakistan. This is my first time that I'm attending this conference here. I'm very happy. I never knew that much about the petroleum engineering, because it's kind of a new field. I'll take this message back home. We are 51.7% women in Pakistan, and I would love them to be into this. Now, the other thing is that the topic was promoting women in this business. How will I make money? Is somebody going to tell me that? Who's going to tell me that?
Making money. As a woman in the industry?
I'm old enough. I'm not going to be a student anymore or working. I'm done with that. I want to make money.
So what does the industry have to offer? You know, I think I'm going to broaden that a little bit, because one of the issues is that young women who might or might not come from a STEM background do not know much about oil and gas. How do we attract them? How do we grab them? You know, this is one that's looking at, does it give me money? What other things do we have that might attract them? Stay here with the phone. Okay. Which is the attraction, yeah.
Well, there's nothing wrong with making money, that's for sure. And we spend most of our days pursuing that goal. It's important also to recognize that there are great opportunities all around you. So someone in this room could be a future partner, a work partner that you can work with. I would recommend you go down to -5 and look at the exhibit. It's fabulous. I spent almost all day there yesterday. But certainly networking and making connections right off the bat, understanding and analyzing the needs of the industry that you want to work with or continue to work in. That's very, very important. And then don't shy away. Bring your wonderful, courageous self in every conversation. And look for opportunities because they're all around you. That would be my small piece of advice. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody wants to add something to that? Yeah, Katrina.
So when we did the interviews, I heard this wonderful anecdote. I want to share it with you because I think it signifies a little bit the mindset in the industry. A young female engineer started her career with a group of classmates, all men at the time, they were getting regular performance evaluations. They were, getting paid, and at some point she noticed, because they're all friends, they talk, she noticed that her male friends got a pay raise. And her evaluation was the best in the group, okay? So she was, that's kind of strange. So she took her courage together and she went to ask the supervisor, why did I not get a pay raise? I perform a lot better than the guys do, so why? You know what the answer was? The answer was, and I'm trying to imitate a Texas accent, so excuse me if I don't hit it on note, but the supervisor said, well, all these boys got to take care of a family one day. You won't have that problem. And that's simply not true. That's not true. I think all of us carry a responsibility to stand up for that unfairness. And we've not tackled equal pay as part of our study this time. Mm-hmm. I think we would want to have a look at it next time, because I do think there is something that bias expresses quantitatively. So if you feel unfairly treated, you have to speak up. And with Peter, if you don't get what you ask for, you go somewhere else.
Yeah, look, I just built. Yeah, you need to. Seriously, it's a global industry. We talk a lot about STEM, but that's really understating the sophistication and the complexity of the industry. It moves capital around the world, and probably more than any other industry, and it operates on every continent other than Antarctica. And it's got, it's an exceptional industry in investing in its people. So, I would put that pitch, and it pays very well, by the way, because of all those things. So they're all the good things. I'd also look for examples. You're asking, well, give me a break. I think you've got to find people that have a history of giving people a break, because success builds success. We all give someone a chance at some point in our career. And if that person then rewards us by exceeding our own expectations of what they could achieve, then we'll do it again, and we'll do it again, and we'll do it again. So I looked through my career. I caught up with someone for dinner last night. It was a senior woman now working in my former company. 10 years ago, I put her into Aceh. When I was running the Indonesian operations. Aceh at that point in time was in the middle of a civil war, and her accommodation was a mortar-fortified container. And so if you think about that, now this is a 6'1" blonde American woman in Aceh, in what now is a pretty strict Muslim province of Indonesia. She was extraordinarily successful, and they still wish that she would come back. I took that on, then went to Papua New Guinea, and I had a problem on a large project, a $25 billion project in Papua New Guinea, that went from the highlands all the way down to the coast, and the two male leaders were fighting, and I knew this had to change. And so one of them left the company, and the other one was put on notice. And I promoted a female project manager to project director. She has delivered in the LNG world the standout project in the industry in the last 5 years, and one by which many companies measure their performance. But that was led by a woman. So it requires somebody, a very competent woman, by the way, and it requires somebody to give people a chance, but equally you have to reward them, because somebody's given somebody else a chance. Somebody gave me a chance when I was a young man starting, and I hope I rewarded them in the chance that they gave me.
Well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our session, so before we close, I'm going to ask each of our panelists, Katrina, you've already started to point out one of the issues that we should be addressing in the next part of the study. Any other points that we should go to address when we move forward? I'm going to start. Ivan, what else do we need to talk about?
I think we need to reinforce messages, no? And if I must summarize these in 5 words, I would say we need leadership, we need sponsorship, we need communication, we need metrics, and we need a lot of perseverance.
Thank you very much. Reem.
I only have three points, but in my opinion, we need a commitment to the long-term goals, because some of what we do is definitely long-term. We need courage from our leaders to take action, and we also need collaboration and partnerships within the energy industry and between our companies to ensure that if field experiences can be offered in one area, if development can be offered in another, if assignments or advancement can be offered in another, we can do that in the brotherhood of the energy business.
Thank you. Peter.
I think we need to continue to have these conversations. As I challenged the group early on, please bring a male colleague with you next time, and then we'll just start building momentum in that regard. Secondly, we need to move beyond talking to implementation and start holding both people and companies accountable for the implementation part of it. And then thirdly, I think we need to start thinking about mid-career women. We've talked a lot today about early career challenges and and particularly the provision of creches and early development programs. The reality is we lose women mid-career, and mid-career is typically when they have teenagers at home and they have that kind of competing family commitment around trying to ensure that those teenagers get the best guidance they have through those critical years of their schooling. I think we need to start talking more about how do we actually provide that support. And then I think you open the challenge. In a digital world, now as I reflect on my 17 and 18-year-old who are in their bedroom and I communicate with them through a cell phone, in the digital world, do they actually need to be physically with us? And I think we need to start to challenge our own paradigms around that. But that's where I would go. I'd start to say, hang on, how do we actually help those mid-career women with those challenges to get those children the very best educational outcomes?
Thank you very much. Going forward, Vatika, what's your suggestion?
I would sum up on 2 levels. One is on the management side, and I would like to bring an example which may say it all. It's when GE was doing very well, and at the end of their performance, I don't recall the year, there were 3 executives which were fired. So it was wondering, what prompted the management to fire the 3 executives? So one was fired because he had indulged in some financial, misgivings. The second one sort of was, rated his employees, his team, in an improper manner. And the third one was fired because he had biases against a woman. So we need to have such forceful management which pushes these things, if not the easy way, the hard way. The message has to go down. That's on the management side, and that would help a lot in the top middle level and the top level for including women and sort of promoting them. For the ladies, for the women, I would say that one has to turn the challenges into opportunities. There is no choice on that. One has to volunteer and contribute. Offer yourself, give your contribution. One has to go beyond the usual work profile, diversify your talents into different domains. Keep your plans ready on your personal front. You have a plan A, plan B, plan C, something will work out for you. Don't lose that opportunity on your working environment. Work hard, have fun, and there is a saying that behind every successful man, there is a woman, right? And I tell the ladies that behind every successful woman, it's you yourself. So live up to that.
Thank you. And last suggestion from Pedro Miras, what should we do?
Yes, very easy to guess, because I have said it several times. I think this study is quite good, but it's necessary to continue updating. It's quite clear, and in the next cycle, I think that it would be interesting to study how flexibility can help these kind of things, because policies are good, but it's not enough to promote people, because at the end, you have to work, and if you don't have flexibility, it's very complicated to face some of the challenges. This is my key statement for this session.
Well, thank you to all of you. And Katarina, we're taking note of all these points that were raised. We'll be taking that forward. We'll come back to you with an updated report in 2020. So what remains for me to do is thank our panel, tell you that the report has been put out on the chairs and will be available online, and hope that we'll all see you in 3 years to see what has changed. Thank you very much.
Kuwait Institute for Scientific Research established this research center, which is the Petroleum Research Center, with the aim to make it a regionally recognized center of excellence in both upstream and downstream technologies.
The main purpose of this center actually is to serve the oil sector and to be the R&D arm of the petroleum industry in Kuwait.
It has a foundation. It is the first in the region. It was started in 1967, so it has a fairly amount of maturation.
The development of technologies in different areas is a continuous process. Why you develop every time? Because there is a need, there is a requirement, there is a way that you have to find a cost-effectiveness technology, impress technology which can fulfill your requirement.
There is enormous challenges that the petroleum industry is facing, and those challenges definitely needs innovative answers.
We are concentrating on how to improve the reserved oil in the country, how we can probably develop technologies to improve the recovery.
In this center, we have 5 types of programs. Each program is focused in one area in the field. First program, we call it Enhanced Oil Recovery. Enhanced Oil Recovery means their work is totally with the upstream.
The reservoir is the more complex part of the earth geology. And as we go to deeper and more difficult oil, we need more understanding. This way we will enhance our capability of producing at lower costs.
If we develop a technology which has to do related to enhanced oil recovery, increasing the production, this technology, of course, can be used in any other country, in the GCC countries or in the world, based on how much effective is this technology.
Another 2 programs, we call one of them optimization refining processes, and we have refining capacity flexibility. These 2 programs under the downstream process.
This program particularly deals with the hydroprocessing. Hydroprocessing means you treat the petroleum fraction in presence of the catalyst and the hydrogen.
We have a number of patents related to the spin catalyst in which we try to develop a technology to recover the metals as well as to reuse this spin catalyst. This can be used everywhere if it is acceptable and then commercialized.
We are very good in catalysis monitoring. Also, we have now for producing the catalyst as well. We're preparing of the catalyst evaluation, and also we are doing it in our labs. We have here a unique lab. We call it pilot plant, which is simplified from the refinery.
We try to align our research activities with the requirement needed by KNPC, and at the same time having this facility which I'm talking now here is give us the opportunity, because this consider a small refinery which is mimicking the real refinery. It's operational 24 hours. So if we target a certain specific product, so we can make a full study, giving the results, upon the completion of the results, giving it to the client, namely KNPC, there is a great potential to they use it on the commercial units.
It's important because the refinery and all the technology are changing with the years, okay, in order to take account of the environment. But more you take account of the environment, you reduce the gain of the refinery. You have to maintain your gain respecting the environment. Because of this, we are developing this technology that they are taking account all these elements.
Petroleum refining, you are processing specific feedstock, but this feedstock's also properties is changing, so you need to develop catalyst. As the property changes, the sulfur content, for example, the sulfur content is increasing. So what technology that you have to use in order to reduce the sulfur, to be accepted worldwide, so the people, they can buy your commodity or your product, which is meeting the international standards. So the demand for technology development is always there.
Fourth one, which is the corrosion assessment and mitigation. And here it's falling into two areas, which is downstream and upstream, and to prevent any kind of failures happens in the future.
Cost of corrosion for the oil industry is in millions. Imagine a simple failure in a refinery, a crack in a vessel or a pipe or a reactor. It means for the refinery shutdown of a unit, and they take several days to change the damaged piece of equipment. So you lose production for several days.
The last one, which will be petrochemicals.
In our program, we are focused on enhancing the product properties, and we are focusing as well on trying to engineer high-performance polymers. In these two solutions, we can help the sector to be more competitive in comparison with the market and international market products.
There are many technologies worldwide, but which technology would suit the reservoir that you have? Imagine not only each country has its own oil properties, but each well, it has its own characteristics. So in this case, you have to really look into technology to produce what we call this type of crude oil, which is under category of non-conventional oil recovery. That's why we introduced the improved oil recovery, the enhanced oil recovery, to produce the heavier feedstock.
We're also responsible to have staff to be well-skilled and trained, Kuwaiti staff in particular, also having students from university, from public authority to having their, for example, their thesis or something like that. So we work collaboratively with those affiliation in order to end up with high caliber staff that can not only be used at Kisar but also in the oil sector.
We have to really be ready and confident in our research projects that we conduct, and also to be highly recognized and acknowledged for the science and technology and innovation, locally, regionally, and internationally.
I think the needs require such institute to exist, not only in Kuwait and the region, but all over the world, because energy is one of the main factors that impact sustainability.
We have a fantastic team, we have a marvelous equipment under one roof, so it is really a platform to start directional research in all kinds.
The vision is clear now. Based on this close relationship that we have, now it's getting more and clearer to us exactly where to focus and how to probably achieve these plans that we set.
ARC-X is a collaboration project involving 6 universities, 4 research institutes and 8 oil companies in Norway. And our aim and goal is to understand the petroleum resources of the Arctic, how to develop the best possible technology that suits the Arctic, which has the least possible environmental impact. The research is mainly divided into 3. So 3 intertwined projects. One is to understand the Arctic geology.
We're dealing with petroleum geology and exploration of the Barents Shelf, so of course geology is a very crucial and important component. I've been working with several different projects and different aspects of sedimentation in Svalbard and the Barents Sea. But particularly I've been focusing on the Paleogene succession that were deposited 60 million years ago in what we call the central basin of Spitsbergen. So I think this basin is a good analog to some of the basins that you find along the western Barents Shelf margin.
Here you can see there's a layer in the rocks that is a bit darker here, and across the fault you see that this block here has gone down on the other side of the fault. Here you have a layer of sediments here that is thicker where the fault has moved down, so you had some space to deposit more sediments.
Of course, when it comes to exploration, having Svalbard as an uplifted part of the subsurface is very important, because then we can use this as an analog to the stratigraphy that the companies are working with in the southern part of the Barents Sea.
The other one is to understand the environmental impact of our activities.
We operate with ecosystem-based management in this region of the world, and that means it's a balance of protecting the environment but also utilizing the resources that exist there. And that is a big challenge, because you have to bring all the stakeholders to the table, you have to communicate the risks, and you have to come up with solutions and manage the future development activities. The final component is a focus on marine mammals, because marine mammals are at the top of the food web in the Arctic. They're very much associated with sea ice, so we have a very strong focus on marine mammals in the program.
Marine ecology is an important part of ARC-X, because we want to work sustainable, and we need to understand the ecosystem. In case something happens, then we need to understand which consequences it can have for the ecosystem.
And the third is to develop the best possible eco-friendly technology that is suitable in these vulnerable areas.
We are taking part in other projects that use new technology to collect data and analyze data. So of course that's the link between kind of old school conventional geology being out in the field is easily combined with new technology.
We also do some technology projects where we develop drone technology for use in these areas, and that requires special infrastructure.
I use drones or unmanned aerial vehicles to look at marine mammals, more specifically whales. They fly in using waypoints following a set path that we design in a computer with the help of Norut. And then every 3 or 4 seconds they take a picture, and then I look to see if there's a whale there or not, and look at the quality of that picture to see how certain I am and what are the light conditions. It's essentially to test how good these tools are, because the use of these systems is quite recent and it's been developing really fast. So having this for marine mammals, it removes almost completely having the observation that you collect at sea and then goes away, that nobody else can look at that. So then you have a recording that several people can see, and you can remove what's so-called as the observer bias.
The biggest resource we have in a program like this is the group of young people.
We have a number of PhD students and postdocs based at universities, but they are also coupled to institutes.
What I'll be doing is that I will investigate the source rock properties of a specific period, the Triassic period. And also next year we plan to go to Svalbard and collect samples there as well. So I will also be collecting samples in Bjørnøya. And we'll correlate that with wells which have been drilled in the Barents Sea. And we can see how these properties of the source rock changes laterally. And then we can try to determine how the quality of the source rock is in terms of hydrocarbon potential.
We conduct many field expeditions and research expeditions, and it could be close by, or it could be trips that require the use of ships. And the University of Tromsø has a research vessel that we use for that. And then we have access to very good laboratories at several of the participating universities, but also industry partners help us with their laboratories. So all in all, it's a complicated mix of different infrastructure that helps us to conduct the research and give the best possible results back to the participants. I don't know any other project which brings all of these activities together into one project like this. And also the sheer volume and size of this project is such that we will have an impact. It's an 8-year project involving many partners.
The cooperation between the academia, the government and the companies as cooperators is very unique in a Norwegian setting at least. And the size of the project and the diversity is also very unique.
It's a continuous process of improving the way we do things as new knowledge comes to the table.
By getting the communication going, we can actually also get good information back from authorities that we can use to improve our research programs. The ultimate delivery, I think, is that we would have been very useful for the authorities, for the oil companies, and for the research institutions and universities who are involved in the project. We will have educated about 30 PhD students and trained postdocs, and we will have published a set of good papers in the best journals.
It's an honor and pleasure for me to be today with you on a 22nd World Petroleum Congress and to chair this session which is focused on the main challenges in midstream, global challenges here. So before I will start, I will make a short introduction about myself and what the International Energy Charter Organization is doing in global energy cooperation. Then I will introduce the panelists one by one, and I will ask them to make the presentation, and then we will give a floor for participants to ask questions. If there will be no questions, by any case, I have prepared a spare questions for each of the panelists, and then we could entertain ourselves for the 90 minutes we have in front of us. So, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. Energy Charter is a multilateral intergovernmental organization which has 47 members across Europe and Asia, and we have more than 50 observers across all continents, from Europe to Asia, from Asia to Africa, and from Africa to Americas. The role of the International Energy Charter is to provide rules for the game for energy security. The Energy Charter Treaty provides with a basic set of the cooperation rules in investment protection and promotion, in trade of energy, in investment, in energy efficiency, in transit and transportation, and as well as provide its members and observers with a set of the dispute resolution instruments. State to state, investor to state, and transit operators as well, they could use the different instruments under the Energy Charter process to disclose and to resolve their problems they may have in their operation. So if you are interested in Energy Charter, you could always find us on internet or through the organizers of the 22nd World Petroleum Council. So without losing too much time, I would like to go and to introduce Jorge Jullien, the Chief Operating Officer from CLH Group from Spain. He holds a degree of industrial engineering, specializing in industrial organization from the Polytechnical University of Madrid, and master's degree in management development from the IECE Business School. He's working in the Spain operator of the LNG business, and I will give you the floor. You are not representing not only Spain here, but also the European region, and as a part of the businesses in European Union as well. So please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to thank the organization of the World Petroleum Congress for giving me the chance to share with you our thoughts on an important subject, as it is the strategy of a company operating in the midstream sector. As you may know, CLH is an oil product logistics company, and as such, our strategic vision may differ from what you may expect in this session. If you are a refining company or a marketing company or a trader, you may be expecting something different. However, I think that doesn't matter what your activity is in the downstream, you will very likely have contact with the logistics. So I think it would be very useful for most of you to know some key points about the strategy of a logistics operator. CLH in particular tries to build its strategy on very specific factors that we think are really differential compared to other companies. We can group them in three pillars that we have called who we are, our know-how, and how we do it. And being very aware of the content of those three pillars, we have chosen three strategic goals. This means that we are not an investment fund. We invest as an operating company, so we are not looking just for new projects. We are looking for new projects fitting in our strategic advantages. Moving to our first pillar, who we are, the most obvious and tangible way to see who we are is looking at our assets. As you can see on the slide, we are operating in 4 different countries: Spain, the UK, Oman, and Ireland. And our assets are oil product pipelines and terminals and storage terminals. We are operating more than 6,000 kilometers of product pipelines and over 80 storage terminals, totaling more than 9 million cubic meters of storage capacity. It is important to see that those assets are essential to the countries where we are operating, as they provide an efficient and reliable supply to the market. We connect the import ports and the refineries through pipelines with terminals where we load ground fuel trucks. And we are connected through the pipelines with airports. We operate storage terminals in the airports. We operate the hydrants in the airports too, and supply vehicles for aircrafts and some terminals for bunkering. the location and configuration of those assets is key to our strategy, as you may be aware that it is much easier to develop new business around existing assets than moving to a totally new country or location. But there's an additional consequence in terms of strategy of this layout, which is that we need to have a component of social responsibility in our strategy. We need to have a commitment with the communities where we operate, because we have to deliver the energy in a safe and reliable way. Second approach to what CLH is looking at our shareholders. And as you can see there, all our shareholders are financial investors. We are not linked to any refining, marketing, or trading company. So you may see this as a handicap to develop the business, because there's no other company bringing new opportunities to CLH or bringing a steady income to the company. But however, we see it as a competitive advantage because we can partner with any company or with any investor for new projects. And they can see that they can be 100% sure that we are not going to interfere with their business and that we are not going to compete with them. And if our partner is an airport, for example, or a government, they know that we can create a level playing field for competition in the final market, if that's the goal. And the third and last view on who we are the people working for the company. We only work on oil product logistics, so we are very specialized. All our teams are only working on this. So, for example, our financial team are experts in the financial aspects of this kind of projects. Our engineering team, they design and deliver of the project. We usually don't engage with EPC contractors, as they usually bring additional costs to the project. And for example, our operations team, they only operate and maintain oil product pipelines and terminals. So specialization that brings the knowledge of the business. This business may seem simple if you compare it to a development of a new mega refinery, cracking large molecules, or if you are drilling in shale oil field. But oil product logistics are crucial to the profitability of the downstream sector. So it really makes a difference. So if we move to the next pillar, which is our know-how. The first point, key point in our know-how is our ability to combine the design and operation of pipelines and terminals. You will find a lot of companies in the world operating terminals. You will find a lot of companies operating pipelines. You will find some of them operating both terminals and pipelines, but you will find very few actually capturing all the synergies between in the design of the pipeline and the terminal and the operation of the pipeline and the terminal. And that is key to the efficiency of the operation, and it is key for a safe operation and reliable operation. Second point regarding the know-how is the technology. Again, you may think that technology is not, or this activity is not technology intensive. But that's not true. If you want to have a secure and cost-effective operation, you need to use technology intensively. For example, the reduction of human intervention in operation and maintenance is key. In this case, in this sector, you can have simple logistics, and it may even be effective in terms of moving the product from point A to point B. But if you don't use technology intensively, you will not do it effectively, and you will not do it safely. So technology is key. As you can see on the slide, remote operation of the use of big data are crucial for this. And third, key point in the know-how is our experience developing new services, new value-added services for our customers, trying to deliver additional value to their P&Ls. But this know-how is not just a theoretical thing. It is extensively implemented in our vast network, and we have been improving it for more than 90 years. There are many external references that tell us that we are good in what we do. I have included one of them, for example, in the slide. The International Energy Agency saying that CLH has one of the largest and most efficient integrated oil product transport and storage networks in the world. But I mean, this is not a sales pitch. I'm not trying to sell anything. This is just for you to understand why our shareholders and the managing team of the company want to invest, want to put our money on this. And the third and last pillar is how we do it in terms of the commercial framework. And in this case, there are many alternative models. The most usual one is our ad hoc commercial agreements. It's just a commercial contract negotiated between both parties, trying to fit and adapt to the preferences and needs of both companies. An alternative system would be joint ventures with financial partners or potential customers that are simply looking for a logistics operator. A third model is the common carrier model that is extensively implemented in Spain, and that has allowed us to provide a transition between the monopoly that existed decades ago in Spain to an open market situation where we offer the same conditions to all the marketers, and they can enjoy the efficiency of an integrated network. Other models are, for example, airport concessions, which are very frequent in the sector. And last and very important, the agreement with governments that in many cases are willing to open the public networks to the commercial activity, maintaining at the same time the resiliency and the emergency response capability of those networks for the country. So if you've seen those three pillars, you won't be surprised to see our three strategic goals. The first one is our present business. We obviously want to keep it, and we want to debottleneck the network. We want to make it more efficient, to make it safer, and to increase the value we deliver to our customers. And what is important to be aware of is that in this sector, it is important to dedicate CapEx consistently. It is not a one-off investment. You will have to invest CapEx every year to be able to go on with the operation. Second, building new services around the existing assets. As we have discussed before, once you have an asset, there are very frequent opportunities to expand the business, for example, expanding the existing terminals or using our assets for different purposes or for other customers. And last and most important growth opportunity for us is the international expansion of the company. But the key factor here is that we are always looking for the alignment between our three strategic pillars and the opportunities we study. If I have to choose just one idea for you to keep from this presentation, is that we are not going to invest in anything that is not aligned with our strategic strengths. There are plenty of financial players nowadays. They are willing to invest a lot of money in this business because it offers a low but a steady return, and the investors are looking for an alternative for the public debt. Nowadays is offering a very poor return that is no longer acceptable for the investors. However, I think it is essential to know that this business is not only about financial capability and APCs, it is much more. We have to acknowledge the importance, the growing importance of the financial sector in this business, but we have to stress the importance of having skilled and experienced oil professionals in any of those business opportunities. So that's all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jorge, for your presentation about CLH and your business strategies in the future. Now I would like to invite as a speaker Mr. Abdel Ahmed Fetoui. He is the Vice President of Sonatrach for liquefaction, refining and petrochemistry. He joined Sonatrach in 1977 as an engineer and had a long and distinguished career within the company. In February 2017, he has been recently appointed as Vice President for liquefaction, refining and petrochemistry at Sonatrach, a national Algerian company. Please, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me try to get an overview of the Sonatrach company. So, as an introduction, so Sonatrach is a vertical integrated group. So, starting from the exploration, production, and we go by the transportation, which we have almost 20,000 kilometers transporting the different products from the south of Algeria to the north. And we have different transformation units and plant complexes for energy, for transport the gas, natural gas to Europe first and to different destination. We have different three plants of petrochemicals, 6 refineries. And adding to that, we have almost 100 subsidiaries that even from the drilling to the maintenance and the engineering. Can you get it to page 2, please, or 3? It's not working on my hand here. Sorry? No, it's okay now. I've got it right. So, as I said, from the south to the north, we have about 20 kilometers, 20,000 kilometers from south to the north. So this is the part of on the north of Algeria, the different sites we have in the west of Algeria. It's Arzou. In the middle, it's Algiers. We have a refinery down there, and the second big site of industrial, it's in Skikda. So here we can show you the different locations of our capability for refining of petrol, the crude oil of Algeria. So we have the capacity of the almost 26 million ton a year for the crude oil. We have another plant of a capacity of 5 million tons of condensate, which is treated in Skikda, and we have another refinery down in the southwest of Algeria in Adrar. I think I have a small problem with how to operate this. Okay? So that technical problem, which is... So here we can show you on the Arzou zone with different plants which we have in Arzou. Here we can show you the different plants of LNG, as you know, Algeria and Sonatrach are the first country in the world which had liquefied the natural gas, starting in 1964. And from then, there were different plants constructed by the refinery in 1973, and the LNG-1 with the 6 trains, starting in 1978, following by LNG-2, another plant which is started as well in 1980. And those plants, they were the biggest built ever in the world as well. So from there, we can say that Sonatrach are the pioneer in liquefaction of natural gas. So in the same time, Sonatrach built in 1976 a methanol complex plant in Arzu, and a refinery of Arzu, which with the capacity about 3 million tons a year. So the development of Sonatrach never stopped. So in 2013, we started another plant of LNG, which the capacity of 4.5 million tons. And I will say another plant which we have in Arzu, it's for the separation of the LPG, which have 9 trains with the capacity of separation of 9 million tons a year. So that's the, as I can repeat, it's one of the biggest in the world of the separation of the LPG, propane, and butane. So for Skikda zone, another area which is, has a lot of capacity, which I can mention, it's the biggest refinery of Sonatrach. It's in the Skikda area with the capacity of 16.5 million tons a year. And in that area, we have other units. We have an LNG plant there with a capacity of 4.7 million square meter of LNG, and we have a plant of PDH, which is a plastic production there, CP1K, as we call it. In the area as well, we have what you call it topping, another treatment of condensate, which is there for, it was started in 2009 to treat the condensate coming from the south. So the strategy, which we call it the business plan, which for the downstream activities and for the, or the midstream, as you call it. So we have, in the strategy of Sonatrach, it's a continuous plan, and politics is to continue to lead on the gas, natural gas sector. So for those, as I mentioned earlier, that the LNG-1 and LNG-2Z were built in 1978 and 80, so to make sure that we are having security and reliability on the areas, so we are going to upgrade. For this, that's for our plan for the next year. So in the area as the development strategy is, we are going to build another unit of nitrogen liquid. That's for using for the maintenance and using as a product for the production in for the different units. For that, for the use of in the area. As well for the development, as we build the capacity of building in Skikda, we are building jetty, LNG jetty, which is coming soon of next year, and another the capacity of storage tanks in area of Skikda. So for the refining project, as you know, Sonatrach now it's important. So we had to develop a strategy to reduce this importation of the gas oil and so on for to use in Algeria. So we are building two. In the plan there is 3 refineries, but for the near future and the middle now we are having some doing some feed for the 3 refineries, one in Hassim Saoud, one in Tiaret, and one in Biskra on the long term. And at the same time, we are going to crack the naphtha, I mean, to have a good values from the naphtha in Skikda with the capacity of 5 million and the fuel oil as well to produce the gas oil. For the sector of petrochemicals, we have a lot of in our portfolio. We have a few projects for the petrochemicals. So we have an MTBE, that's for the production of in the Arzu, and linear projects for linear alkaline benzene as well in Skikda. And we plan for for the PDH-PP, polypropylene, and the same time for production of 1 million ton of ethylene. And all those projects, we are looking for the partners for the investment. So those on the petrochemicals we have as a strategy is to build, to operate in with our main partners from abroad. So for this, I think we in Sonatrach we have a strategy which have some advantages for comparing to others. It will high operation experience in crude, natural gas fields, processing, refining, LNG plants, management, operating and maintenance of the biggest refinery in Africa. We have enough feedstock available and the low cost of energy. Main areas for the project are identified on the coastal industrial zone, availability of skilled, young and graduate workforce, and favorable investment environment, comparing to others. And for this, I'll thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fetoui, for your comprehensive presentation of the Sonatrach and its investment projects on upgrading and existing infrastructure and also to the new constructions. Now, let me... so it's coming, your presentation? Okay, Abdul Qadir? So, Okay, so after a small exchange between my panelists and support team, so I think we could come to the speaker number 3, Mr. Sanjeev Singh, chairman of the Indian Oil Corporation. He is quite a freshman in his post. I have to admit that he started to occupy this position as of 1st June 2017, so I think we still could congratulate him on this new promotion. And I think this is a very important presentation, and after being in Europe, in Africa, now coming to the South Asia, to the Indian subcontinent, and we are looking very much forward to hear from you, sir, about the challenges what Indian Oil Corporation see and what the opportunities see in the near future and in the years to come in both pipeline and refinery business. Mr. Singh, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First of all, let me thank WPC for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts with you, especially when the oil and gas sector is seeing a lot of new developments, a lot of new challenges, and a lot of new opportunities. If we look at the global oil demand, I mean, these are the projections for the coming years. Probably the maximum demand is shown for India, which is 4.1%. And apart from the demand, there would be changes because of fuel switch, because of efficiency, and in spite of considering these factors, we expect that the demand will be fairly robust in the years to come. This slide indicates the way India had been operating refineries. I mean, in India we have 23 refineries, and out of which 11 refineries are with Indian Oil Corporation. We have a very vast pipeline network, nearly 12,000 kilometers of crude pipeline and equal distance of product pipelines. We have large number of terminals. The refineries are located at coastal locations as well as inland locations. We operate the world's oldest refinery, which was started in 1901, and we operate one of the latest refinery also, which was commissioned last year before last year. The thing which is worth seeing is that consistently India had been operating its refineries at more than 100% capacity. Last year also we operated all the refineries at average 105%. While if you look at the rest of the world, probably the capacity utilization had not been 100%. Predominantly, India is driven by the high demand growth. It's not only this year, I mean, consistently we had been seeing high demand, and we expect the demand to continue in a similar fashion in the years to come. Now, apart from oil and gas demand, we also see fairly robust demand for petrochemicals also. We are the third largest economy in terms of GDP on PPP basis, and the fastest growing large economy at the moment. I mean, consistently we are growing at the 7% plus on GDP basis year to year. These are some of the major growth drivers which we see. We have a very young population. We have very strong infrastructure, and there is a lot of investment which is happening in infrastructure growth. There is a large urban population. We are going ahead with large number of smart cities, and Make India program is to encourage a lot of production facilities coming up within the country, and rural consumption is also expected to go up. All these things are driving not only the industrial demand for oil and gas products, but for petrochemical products also. If we look at the transportation fuel demand, it's directly linked with the sale of growth of two-wheelers and four-wheelers. When it comes to gasoline demand, India is a very typical market because nearly 65% of the gasoline goes for two-wheelers, which is unlike most of the countries. And we see tremendous growth in two-wheelers as well as tremendous growth in four-wheelers. The country is today on Euro 4 fuel, and in the next 3 years the country is switching to Euro 6 fuel, bypassing or leapfrogging Euro 5 standards. So within the next 3 years' time, the country is going to Euro 6, and for this, nearly $10 billion of investment is being done in the oil and gas industry. This is again, this is only to confirm, because there is a lot of challenge, or there is a lot of concern, or there is a lot of movement towards electric vehicles, or the vehicles which are not run typically by the conventional fuels. We have done, I mean, a lot of estimates are done by external agencies, as well as we have done our own internal assessments also. And in spite of considering everything, we see very robust growth in transportation fuel demand, both driven by the passenger vehicles as well as driven by the commercial vehicles. We had been seeing the gasoline demand consistently year by year going nearly 9 to 10%, and the diesel demand going yearly consistently around 2 to 3%. The diesel base is very, very high. Diesel consumption is nearly 4 times more than the gasoline. So even 3% growth is also significant. The last year total petroleum products consumption in the country was 194 million ton, which is growing at a rate of almost 5+% on CAGR basis. This is again the similar numbers, I mean the similar projections for gasoline and diesel, and which we feel will continue to grow in the country. These are the total demand numbers projected for 2030 and 2040 by different agencies. I mean, these are by BP Energy, Indian Energy Report, IEA report, OPEC numbers, and our own numbers. Even by the very conservative numbers also, but we expect that by 2030 the demand will be around 330 million tons. I mean, which is almost double of the present levels. I mean, today we are at about 194 million tons. So it is little lower than the 100% increase in the next 13 to 15 years. So we are expecting that next 15 years, the demand will be almost double in the country. Now, the challenge definitely poses tremendous challenge on refiners particularly to meet such high demand, especially in an environment when some disruption may also happen. These are, again, as I said earlier, these are a couple of demand drivers, some additional demand drivers, and a couple of other type of fuels which are moving very fast are, one of them is LPG, because today we have nearly 200 million LPG domestic customers, with around 75% of penetration of LPG in all the domestic families, and we expect to touch it to 100% in very soon. And apart from LPG, we don't import any other product. It's only LPG. We import nearly 50% of our requirement. So high LPG demand growth is also driving the total demand numbers. Apart from fuel products, the petrochemical demand is also very high. I mean, these are the comparative numbers of different countries since 1988, 2000 and 2015. And we can see that India had been jumping in terms of the demand for polymers in the country. This flexibility to produce a large quantity of petrochemicals and polymers particularly would provide a lot of flexibility to the refineries in future. Because in case the petrol and the conventional fuel oil demand does not grow as expected today, then the petrochemical will provide tremendous flexibility to the refineries in future. These are again the similar numbers for petrochemical demand, which indicate very robust demand and projections for the future. This is again talking about the polymer growth in the consistently going up. This slide indicates the expected import. I mean, in spite of all the capacity which we plan to build, in spite of all the capacity of petrochemicals which we plan to build, there is a significant deficit of different kind of petrochemicals in the country, which we foresee. So there is a lot of scope of building petrochemical plants along with the refineries in the country. These are again the numbers of different type of petrochemicals and net imports of chemicals and petrochemicals, which had been increasing consistently in the country. These are again predominantly the demand and supply numbers for polyethylene and polypropylene, which also indicate the significant scope of adding capacity for these polymers. Now let's talk about the preparedness for the country for meeting the future demands. Now these locations are the refinery locations, and as I said earlier, we operate total 23 refineries with a total capacity of 230 million tons. These refineries are in the government sector, in the private sector, as well as in JV. The next slide indicates the different companies and the number of refineries and their capacities. We operate very small refineries, we operate medium-sized refineries, we operate very large refineries. But all the refineries are modern, all the refineries are upgraded from time to time, and all the refineries are today making Euro 4 fuels. We have, in line with to meet our domestic demand, I mean, we had been, since 1998, the country had been meeting the 100% domestic demand by its own refining capacity. And since then, the refining capacity had been in excess of the domestic demand. And in line with the projection for future demand, we plan to add capacities by brownfield expansion as well as by greenfield expansion. And one of the very mega projects which we are taking up is a 60 million ton refinery on the west coast of India. It's a joint venture refinery by the three public sectors, and it will be coupled with a mega petrochemical complex, probably the world's largest greenfield refinery built so far. These are some of the features of this refinery, and I think we should be able to, we are in the process of acquisition of the land for this project, and a lot of work has been done, and we should be able to start the work maybe within a year or so. Apart from refinery expansion, we are also building a lot of flexibility in the refinery configuration. We are going ahead with the technologies which can switch the refinery operation from conventional refinery mode to a petrochemical mode. And in this direction, we have developed a couple of our own technologies also. InMax technology, for example, is one such technology. It's a conventional, or it's a modified FCC unit, which can give up to 55%, 45 to 55% LPG, and around 22 to 25% of propylene. I mean, this unit itself can switch to a petrochemical mode of operation, processing resid, and provide tremendous or a large quantity of feedstock for propylene and for polypropylene and polyethylene. So it provides, we are already operating a large unit of 4.3 million ton in one of the refinery, and it's providing tremendous flexibility as far as refinery operation is concerned. So we strongly feel that the future refinery configurations, they will need to be flexible enough so that they can change their mode of operation in line with the demand for products. Similarly, this is again, I mean, we are talking about the InMax technology. I mean, we are operating 2 units based on this technology at the moment. This is a slight comparison of the capex of similar type of projects in India and other locations, and as you can see that these numbers are extremely competitive. I mean, to build a large refinery in India is extremely, extremely competitive. In a typical refinery, I mean, more than 85% is all equipment which are produced in India, which makes the refinery construction extremely competitive in India. So we strongly feel that India is a good destination for petrochemical and refinery projects for the future. We have a robust and sustainable demand growth. Along with the strong domestic demand, India provides advantages in terms of economies of scale. Opportunities do exist for existing and participating in proposed integrated refinery and petrochemical complex, because this large refinery project, as I was mentioning, I mean, it has a scope of foreign direct investment also. We have no shortage of skilled manpower in the country. I mean, as far as our refinery operation is concerned, I mean, we are able to operate them at almost at the least cost compared to any other refinery in the world. And we are a preferred destination for back-end activities, technology, and R&D activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Think. I think that the takeaways from your insightful presentation could be encapsulated in two words. It's more capacity and more flexibility, the market, and inviting investors to come to India. So now, after the tour of the world, we are coming back to the home country of 22nd World Petroleum Congress, and so I would like to invite the Vice President of Potash to the speaking slot. Mr. Abdul Kadir Yaylacı is the Deputy Director of Potash Turkey. As you may know, the Potash is a main pipeline and operation company in Turkey. He completed his high school degree in Konya and was graduated from Management Engineering program in Istanbul Technical University, but also he graduated with honors at the Michigan State University Eli Broad College of Business with a dual degree in finance and marketing. He is active in the position of Deputy General Manager of the Potash since a couple of years. So, Mr. Abdul Kadir Yaylacı, the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. Before I begin my speech, I would like to express my sincere gratitude of being a part of this great organization. Right now, I'm the last speaker. I know, having last speaker has some advantages, disadvantages. My presentation is very long, only 4 slides, or 5 slides, whatever you want to look at it. Now, Potash is an infrastructure company. As an infrastructure company and as a government entity, our main aim is providing sufficient energy in an uninterrupted way, cheapest way, and in a long-term sustainability. Over the decades, Turkey became the second spot after China in growth of natural gas and electricity supplies. And when you look at the Turkish growth in the near future, we will think that energy needs in Turkey will continue to grow. When we look at the growth in Turkey, energy in Turkey, since the 2000, we can see that nearly 80% increase in energy consumption in Turkey. When you convert it to the natural gas, we can see that there is 200% increase in natural gas consumption. When we look at the percentage of the natural gas in Turkey, we can see that it's nearly 30% of the energy consumption is supplied by natural gas. Turkey doesn't have a natural gas, so we are major importer. We are importing natural gas from Russia, Azerbaijan, and Iran. We have got LNG contracts, long-term contracts from our colleagues here from Algeria and Nigeria. Also, we are using spot LNG contracts here. When we look at the natural gas consumption of Turkey, last year we have got a record consumption. It's around 50 BCM, 50 billion cubic meters. When we look at the near future, we are expecting this number will increase as well. Because energy consumption of Turkey is increasing, it means that electricity consumption is increasing. 30% of the consumption is from natural gas. If you call the chain of thoughts, you can see that consumption of the natural gas will increase. Some of you know, Minister of Turkey has a kind of a policy saying using natural resources and renewable resources. When you look at the reports all over the world, you can see that demand for natural, even though I'm rephrasing my words, despite the fact that renewable energy is increasing every day, every year, and the consumption and production rate increase very rapidly, the demand to fossil fuels will not change in a foreseeable future. So when we look at the large scale, we will see that consumption to demand to natural gas will continue to grow. In the world, they will continue to grow in Turkey, maybe stable around the world. I've got doubts on that one, but that's the report says. Now, when we look at the project size, we know that most of the products, natural gas products, comes to Turkey pipeline base. We have got pipeline from Russia, pipeline from Azerbaijan, Iran. We are trying to diversify our needs. But important part of it, 32% of the all natural gas transportation trade in the world comes in LNG form. It means that LNG is very important. When we look at the reports, you will see that LNG terminals are, liquefaction LNG terminals are building in United States and Australia. It means that more LNG will be going into the market. So, as BOTAŞ and a consumer of a natural gas, we are planning to use this one also. In Turkey, currently, last year we used 7.7 BCM LNG. We have got 2 LNG terminals in Turkey. One is privately owned. We have got 1 FSRU unit in Turkey, privately owned, and we are planning to do another one by BOTAŞ. And we are planning to do it at the end of this year. When you look at the overall capacity, we can see that nearly 9% of the gasification of the LNG comes from FSRU units. And when you look at the near future, FSRU has much more advantages than the landscape, land-based LNG terminals. So we are estimating that FSRU units and FSRUs will increase in the future. Currently, we know that 13 countries are using FSRU, and some of the countries are trying to build their jetties and establishments for them. For example, when downstairs, I was talking with our Indian colleagues. They were talking about some of the projects on the, I think, on the west side of India, some FSRU terminals, but they haven't finished yet. So we are in construction as well. On this part, when we look at on the Turkey as a whole, sustainability and supply security is very important for us. So we are using pipeline projects to ensure long-term demands. We are using LNG and FSRU, some fluctuations, some part of it, but the most important part is storage also. We have got 2 projects in right now. One is Silivri, the other one is Salt Lake. They have got already storage in, Salt Lake is started to operation this year, but even though they are not sufficient enough, we are expanding their capacity. By the 2023, we are expecting to go over 10 BCM capacity, very close to 11 BCM capacity. Now, let's take back and look at the overall consumption of Turkey. You can see that on this one, we have got gray ones are the storage places. I don't know what color is that. It's purple or orange, something. It's LNG terminals. The others are income for natural gas. When you look at these, you can see several entry points and for different type of energy. We don't think this is enough. Let's compare to Germany, for example. Germany is also one of the most natural gas importers. Turkey is, I think, the 5th in the Europe, 6th or 7th in the world as the natural gas importer, 23rd as a natural gas consumption company overall the ranking. Germany has three pipelines from Russia coming, and one is under construction. 3 from Holland, I think 3 from Finland or somewhere. So they have got different internal points, and they are using LNG as well. It's kind of they are securing their supply. We are also in Turkey, we are also planning to secure our supply by differentiating, by diversifying our income, natural gas income, like pipelines, extra pipelines, international projects, LNGs like FSRU and storage. When we look at the overall consumption of the world, we can see that nearly 70% of the demand of the energy comes from fossil fuels. It means that Turkey, moreover, Turkey has border countries, has nearly 60% of the reserves of natural gas are the Turkey border countries. Demands in Europe, supply in Mediterranean region, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Russia, all border countries. So Turkey kind of in between. So that Turkey has a unique point to develop projects to transfer these gas from these countries to the European countries. When we look at that, existing routes for the natural gas Europe in Europe, we can see from northeast, which is Russia, from north, Holland, England, and Norway, and from south, Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya. From north part and south part, we can see that over the years that there is some declines from the supply. Not all countries, but some reserves are declining. So Europe also wants to get new route, fourth route, which is called Southern Gas Corridor, which is on the projects. Some of you are aware of that, Nabucco, Turkey, Greece, Italy projects, which is converted to TAP and TANAP. And we can also add, I think, Turk Stream, which is signed last year. When we look at the other resources like Turkmenistan, Iran, and East Mediterranean, any developments in the future will put in Turkey, and we will be part of that projects as well. On this project, we can see that lots of the international projects is combining in Turkey. Turkey has a successful record of participating in the projects. Nabucco pipeline, Intercontinental Turkey, Greece, Italy, South Caucasus project pipeline, which is called also Baku-Tbilisi-Erzurum pipeline, TANAP, Intercontinental Bulgaria, and Turkish Stream. Some of them has not realized yet, some of them that already, some of them is under construction, but all brought us great expertise on how to build a pipeline, how to operate a pipeline, how to do the investments. Turkey has a part of TANAP with BP and SOCAR. Construction is, like did Mr. Aliyev told 2 days ago, nearly around 80%. At the mid of 2018, we are giving gasification of the TANAP. It's already very close to closing. As BOTAŞ, we will continue to support our country to participate in different projects that will enable our neighbors to reach European markets. But our motto, quote unquote, motto is that we want all shareholders, stakeholders of these projects gain something. It needs to be win-win agreement. We want to develop a suitable, a profitable, all parties gain something on it. Therefore, we believe that Turkey has political will and power to contribute any efforts to remove existing obstacles on these projects. I will try to summarize as much as possible, keep it as short as possible for you. Therefore, I end my speech here, and thank you for your patience, and Thank you, all of you.
Thank you very much, Abdul Qadir Bey. So if I should somehow sum up your presentation, I would say that Potash is looking for sufficient, affordable, and profitable, uninterrupted supply chain to be built based on the diversification of different routes and supply to Turkey and to the neighborhood. So, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to applaud to all our panelists that we did it well in time. So we have still 25 minutes, roughly, for the questions from the audience. So I would like to open the floor for the questions. If there will be no questions, I will complement with my own right as a chairman. I see the gentleman over there. So I would like to ask you to introduce yourself and then to ask a question, whether it's to the panelists or to a particular one of our guests.
Yeah, my name is Sri Ganesh Gandham. I am from Hindustan Petroleum, India. My question is to the full panel. We are seeing that over the decades, the fuel specifications have improved. Euro 2, Euro 3, Euro 4, Euro 5, and Euro 6 is currently in vogue. The sulfur specs has been capped. The SOx, NOx has been, emission specification has been spelled out. So what is next? The answer is, seems to be very clear. Some of the cities are proclaiming, I don't know, it's Euro 7, no fossil fuel cars will be running in their cities. Is it that Euro 7? So what is the strategy of the oil companies? How do you take your business to that level of the entire sector of fossil energy for the transportation fuel will be shifted to battery, which in turn get power from whether it is gas or coal or thermal energy. The shift is going to take place and the shift will be huge. So what strategy as an oil companies you are planning for the future? What we see is that oil companies are complacent in terms of the change is going to come and it is going to be after 15, 20, 30 years later. But unless something is being put into action now, as this is a Petroleum Congress, the onus is on the CEOs to do something. That's why I'm putting this question to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. I think that the question is right about the plan B. So we have heard the plan A for all four panelists from very diverse background and very diverse type of companies, state-owned, vertically integrated, private ones, focused on the niche or the big players. So could you answer this question? What is the plan B for your different companies? Maybe we could start from India and then to go along the panel, please. Mr. Singh, the floor is yours.
Okay, let me start with the first response. I mean, you started with the Euro 6 and what is beyond Euro 6. If we see that predominantly it is the tailpipe emission which is controlled. I mean, when we talk about Euro 6, it is the emission standard for the tailpipe emission. And to meet those emissions, the fuel specifications are made. Probably till Euro 6 level, the fuel specs they were determined to control pollution. Probably beyond this, if we look at the conventional fuel, it will be for improving the fuel economy. So now, probably now the specifications will be driven so that the engines can give better economy, number one. Number two, you talk about whether Euro 7 will be some sort of blended fuels or superior fuels from that point of view. Different countries today already have specifications for different blended fuels, I mean, which are either blended with ethanol or blended with biodiesel or things like that. I don't know whether a few countries have mandated. I mean, within India also, we have specification of 10% ethanol blended gasoline, but today it's not mandatory. I mean, it's the specifications are there. Definitely, it gives some advantage in terms of engine performance. So let's see. I mean, how different countries move. Your third indication was whether EVs or different kind of vehicles. They would be next generation of vehicles. Let's see. I mean, because it's not a threat. We don't see it as a threat. It's a tremendous opportunity for all of us who are providing energy to the society. And only EV, probably only running EV does not solve the problems. We have to see that how we are generating electricity. If we are generating still, I mean, like India, we are still using nearly 45% coal as a primary source for energy. So if we are generating electricity by using coal, probably we are only shifting problem from cities to somewhere else. So it's a complete picture probably which has to be seen. And definitely, I mean, different forms of energy, different forms of vehicle will come. But what I had been trying to say is, apart from the new vehicles or EVs coming in, the existing technology of automobiles will also refine further. So, I mean, now we are going to see tremendously efficient engines. I mean, the sector has seen a lot of development, and I'm sure that we'll see more and more development, and different forms of vehicles will definitely come.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fatoui, what's view from Sonatrach?
So, if I can reply to this question on behalf of Sonatrach. So, in Sonatrach, as you know, has an obligation to make all the products to the consumption in Algeria. So we follow by law. There is a law which has some to make the specification applied. I mean, all the products are ruled by the government, and Sonatrach had the obligation to do that. And for that reason, we spend more than $4 billion on our refineries to upgrade them to Euro 5, so we can meet the demand for this quality product distribution on the country. And so we follow up by all this, because this quality of product, it's go to the benefit of the consumers, which is for the health and the environment, respecting all the engagement of the government of Algeria, like the COPEC 21. So in our strategy in Sonatrach, is we go by the rules to reply and to apply the specification given by our government, and that it's a must for Sonatrach. So we have no, we are not free on that way. So we are going to follow the path for the long term. Same thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your opinion. Maybe now I would like to ask Mr. Yailaji from Botash.
As a company, as I say, we are not oil and gas company. We are energy company. So as an energy company, as a consumer, we always welcome efficiency increases. It means efficiency increase means that more outcome with a less input. When we look at in the near future, despite all the increases, all the efficiencies, all the, let's say, electric motors, electric car developments, on the foreseeable future, we will need fossil fuels. And we'll need reduce carbon emissions. So some work needs to be done. But as a company, or I'm pretty sure most of the companies will not stock what they are today. The world is evolving. The sector is evolving. When you look at the oil and gas companies 20 years ago, they were all oil and gas companies. Right now, all the companies, oil and gas companies of 20 years ago, positioning themselves right now as energy companies. We are also an energy company. Right now, maybe we are working with natural gas and petrol, oil. Maybe in the future, we will be dealing with synthetic liquid something, or synthetic gas something. We will adapt. It's the main, look at the main purpose of ourselves, supplying the demands of consumers, energy demands of consumers. Which form it is liquid, gas, or electricity, it doesn't matter.
Thank you very much for the Botash view. And now I would like to ask Mr. Gurjayan, what is the future for the logistic companies focused on this market niche?
Yeah, well, the first thing I have to say is that we have been there. The oil product consumption in Spain between 2008 and 2013 decreased by almost 25%. What we did is cost efficiency. There's no other way. We charge per cubic meter, per throughput. So the rule number one is efficiency. Looking ahead, I totally agree with my colleague from Botas that it is going to take very long. It is not going to be a switch for tomorrow. Furthermore, there are many transport systems which don't have an alternative. So it's going to take time, and we will have to confirm that the speed of that change to develop a strategic plan.
Thank you very much, panel, for those answers for the question. Any other question, please? Auditor, in the middle, on the right side.
Thank you. David O'Byrne from Platt. I've got a question for Mr. Yailager. Could you give us some details about your FSRU plant that you're planning to install this year? I understand it's going to be installed at Dirtyol on the Eastern Mediterranean. Is that right? Could you give us some details?
I can give you some details on that one. Right now, we are constructing the connection to the main grid. We are started the construction of the jetty already. We made deal with the FSRU unit already. Main purpose of our aim is that preparing and will be in operation at the end of 2017. So that during the winter time, it will be ready for us to use in our system. For whom doesn't know FSRU, it's a kind of a, let me phrase this way. FSRU is a kind of a LNG vessel ship with the gasification unit on it. And they mostly used for daily fluctuations or peak time requirements. Therefore, it's very, compared to land LNG units, they are much more cheaper. It means much more quicker rate of returns. And right now, we are on operation, let's say, on the construction phase of the project already. We're already halfway through it. I hope that I can answer your questions, all of it. On the capacity of, capacity of what, sorry? On the FSR, I'm not technical, sorry about that. But as far as I know, maybe I'm wrong, I'm not technical, quitting code. As far as I know, the gasification one is around, I think, 15 or 20 millions per hour. That's I heard, but I cannot sure about it because I'm not technical. We know that we are working with our partners. The ship is very new ship. The capacity is around a little bit high end of the average ships in the world. That's the information that I have.
Thank you very much for the question about the FSRU and for the answer. Any other question from the auditory? I don't see any, maybe on the left side.
Hello, my name is Murat Vashpa from Merge Market. I'm asking this question to a logistics company from Spain, Mr. Gulen. What are the key markets for you to grow in near future? You specialize in Spain, Ireland, UK, and Oman. What's next? What's the next market for you? Thank you.
Well, it has, of course, we have some preferences for some geographical zones, but I think that the key aspect here is are the details of the project. So once we have a project that is aligned with our strengths, our interest is focused on that. It's not so much as the country risk, which is an issue too, of course, as the specific characteristics of the project.
Thank you very much for this quite convincing answer. Any other question for now? If not, so I would like to ask a question of Mr. Singh about this West Coast of India project. So I think, for me, coming from the small European country, to have a refinery in the capacity of 60 million tons per year is something really big. So could you a little bit elaborate on this, how you will handle it in an operational way? So it should be a great substructure, so the logistics, how to bring the oil in and then to distribute the products in the market, so which we know that refineries usually serve a certain area to make them competitive regarding to the price of delivery of the logistics. So how do you foresee this, to address this big question, to distribute the products of 60 million ton per year capacity of a refinery? Please, if you could enlighten us.
One thing is true, that the refinery capacity is really high. But let me tell you that we have considered this capacity considering the domestic demand. I mean, although the refinery will be situated on the west coast of the country, and the particular state or the particular location had been selected considering the shortage of, or the future demand within the country itself. The refinery being on the coastal location will have the flexibility to export almost all the products or move the products coastally to different parts of the country. And we have already done the logistics work to move the large quantities of products through different pipelines within the country. The country already has a vast network of product pipelines, which is further being expanded. Apart from the liquid product pipelines, the country is building very large and vast network of gas pipelines also. The refinery will, we are still, definitely it will be more than one stream, typically around 3 streams of 20 million tons, and will be integrated with a large petrochemical complex, and obviously with all integrated facilities.
Thank you very much, Major. Economy of scale will have a place here. So any other question from the auditory? If this is not the case, then I have an additional question to Sonatrach, Mr. Fatoui. So we have seen your map, and if I would compare to the map of Algeria in its infrastructure to the map of Turkey, it was just an opposite of one. So you are the energy producing countries, you are very well diversified outputs, and so we have seen you have a pipeline. We know that you have a pipelines to the northeast, through Tunisia, to Sicily, to Italy. You have a direct pipelines to the north, to Spain. You have a pipelines to the west, through Morocco, again to Spain. So, and we have utmost capacity and experience in LNG plants. So those are all projects which are linking you to your main market. Your main market is well known on the other side of the Mediterranean, or the north of the Mediterranean, is all European Union, which is becoming now the one single market in energy. How do you see in the future? Do you see that it's a need, a new infrastructure to be built? Because in Europe, this is a big issue. So they are discussing all the time how to build internal infrastructure. How do you see it as a Sonatrach, one of the main supplier of gas to Europe, to the southwestern part of Europe?
So for Sonatrach, has a policy, a long-term policy with the European. So on the Mediterranean, it's a reliable source for the south of Europe. So, and we are having linked by Spain, Italy, and other countries, European countries, by contract, long-term contract. And same thing, they are our partners in the upstream. So this relation, the good relation between Sonatrach and these companies and these countries are sustainable. So for us, for Sonatrach, it's a natural market for us, it's Europe. So in that case, our development in the long term, there is no risk on it. So I think we have a good, reliable partnership on this area in the Mediterranean countries, even with Turkey. So I think in that case, and another advantage for Sonatrach and Algeria, that we have the two ways of exporting the natural gas, by as a form of gas or by ship, which is by LNG. So I think, and another advantage of Sonatrach is the quality of the gas. The gas of Sonatrach is quite good quality, one of the best, as I know. So I think for that case, I think there is no doubt that we will continue for long term, having a good relationship, commercial and business development with Europe.
Thank you, but we are not planning to build a new pipeline in a foreseeable future.
No,
we'll
I think
stick to the LNG.
No, no, we have already the pipelines there, but I think we have another. There's a long term we have in our portfolio, which is not. There is another pipeline which is coming, which is not public yet, which we cannot talk to reach Europe, even from Europe. I mean the south and the north of Europe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other question from the floor? No more question. So maybe this will lead us to the end of today's session. So I would like to ask the auditor to applaud to our panelists because they made a great job today.
Kuwait Institute for Scientific Research established this research center, which is the Petroleum Research Center, with the aim to make it a regionally recognized center of excellence in both upstream and downstream technologies.
The main purpose of this center actually is to serve the oil sector and to be the R&D arm, of the petroleum industry in Kuwait.
It has a foundation. It is the first in the region. It was started in 1967, so it has a fairly amount of maturation.
The development of technologies in different areas is a continuous process. Why you develop every time? Because there is a need, there is a requirement, there is a way that you have to find a cost-effectiveness technology, impress technology which can fulfill your requirement.
There is enormous challenges that the petroleum industry is facing, and those challenges definitely needs innovative answers.
We are concentrating on how to improve the reserved oil in the country, how we can probably develop technologies to improve the recovery.
In this center, we have 5 types of programs. Each program is focused in one area in the field. First program, we call it Enhance Oil Recovery. Enhance Oil Recovery means their work is totally with the upstream.
The reservoir is the more complex part of the earth geology. And as we go to deeper and more difficult oil, we need more understanding. This way we will enhance our capability of producing at lower costs.
If we develop a technology which has to do related to enhanced oil recovery, increasing the production, this technology, of course, can be used in any other country, in the GCC countries or in the world, based on how much effective is this technology.
Another two programs, we call one of them optimization refining processes, and we have refining capacity flexibility. These two programs under the downstream process.
This program particularly deals with the hydroprocessing. Hydroprocessing means you treat the petroleum fraction in the presence of the catalyst and the hydrogen.
We have a number of patents related to the spin catalyst in which we try to develop a technology to recover the metals as well as to reuse this spin catalyst. This can be used everywhere if it is acceptable and then commercialized.
We are very good in catalysis monitoring. Also, we have now for producing the catalyst as well. We're preparing of the catalyst evaluation, and also we are doing it in our labs. We have here a unique lab. We call it pilot plant, which is simplified from the refinery.
We try to align our research activities with the requirement needed by KNPC, and at the same time having this facility which I'm talking now here is give us the opportunity, because this consider a small refinery which is mimicking the real refinery. It's operational 24 hours. So if we target a certain specific product, so we can make a full study, giving the results upon the completion of the results, giving it to the client, namely KNPC. There is a great potential to use it on the commercial units.
It's important because the refinery and all the technology are changing with the years, okay, in order to take account of the environment. But more you take account of the environment, you reduce the gain of the refinery. You have to maintain your gain respecting the environment. Because of this, we are developing this technology that they are taking account all these elements.
Petroleum refining, you are processing specific feedstock, but this is feedstock's also properties is changing, so you need to develop catalyst. As the property changes, the sulfur content, for example, the sulfur content is increasing. So what technology that you have to use in order to reduce the sulfur, to be accepted worldwide, so the people, they can buy your commodity or your product, which is meeting the international standards. So the demand for technology development is always there.
Fourth one, which is the corrosion assessment and mitigation. And here it's falling into two areas, which is downstream and upstream, and to prevent any kind of failures happens in the future.
Cost of corrosion for the oil industry is in millions. Imagine a simple failure in a refinery, a crack in a vessel or a pipe or a reactor. It means, and they take several days to change the damaged piece of equipment. So you lose production for several days.
The last one, which will be petrochemicals.
In our program, we are focused on enhancing the product properties, and we are focusing as well on trying to engineer high-performance polymers. In these two solutions, we can help the sector to be more competitive in comparison with the market and international market products.
There are many technologies worldwide, but which technology would suit the reservoir that you have? Imagine not only each country has its own oil properties, but each well, it has its own characteristics. So in this case, you have to really look into technology to produce what we call it, this type of crude oil, which is under category of non-conventional oil recovery. That's why we introduced the improved oil recovery, the enhanced oil recovery, to produce the heavier feedstock.
We're also responsible to have staff to be well-skilled and trained, Kuwaiti staff in particular, also having students from university, from public authority to having their, for example, their thesis or something like that. So we work collaboratively with those affiliation in order to end up with high caliber staff that can not only be used at Kisar but also in the oil sector.
We have to really be ready and confident in our research projects that we conduct, and also to be highly recognized and acknowledged for the science and technology and innovation, locally, regionally, and internationally.
I think the needs require such institute to exist, not only in Kuwait and the region, but all over the world, because energy is one of the main factors that impact sustainability.
We have a fantastic team, we have a marvelous equipment under one roof, so it is really a platform to start directional research in all kinds.
The vision is clear now. Based on this close relationship that we have, now it's getting more and clearer to us exactly where to focus and how to probably achieve these plans that we set.